Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time today and doing
My
this
pleasure.
with me today. This is really valuable content for us then. So thank you. Okay, because anyhow, you were the first one from the bigger company to trust in us, and that's why we should.
Okay.
Yeah, you were the first one. Like we had smaller ones, but when it comes to bigger companies, you were then the first one. And I think it makes sense, especially for the psychometric profiling aspect. It makes sense then that we do that video, and because out of this, it turned out that many companies are interested to do this. So yeah, then let's
So to
start.
some extent, we have been the Trojan horse.
Yes, no, not to
Okay.
that extent you were. So that, yeah, really, because yeah, profiling a whole customer basis was the first one that we did. So yeah, it was the first case.
Good.
Okay. So I think before we start, it would make sense that maybe first you say something about yourself, because people who will see that video will know who you are, and then we
Yeah.
can move forward.
Okay. uh, Thank you first of all, Christina, for this opportunity. More than happy to be one of the testimonial of how good Brandmind is, and especially for many companies beyond of Cornèrcard will be. My name is Davide Rigamonti. I covered in more than 20 years several different kind of finance activity, moving from an M&A, corporate, and I had the opportunity to get in touch with Brandmind in the moment in which I covered the position of head of Cornèrcard. It is one of the first most important player into the Swiss environment, into credit card and payments. Based on that, the positioning that we had at the time of in which I had the opportunity to get in touch with Christina through one guy within my organization that has the passion of everything that become concrete in terms of marketing analysis, psychometric analysis, psychological analysis. We discussed at the initial stage how our profiling might improve. At the original stage, what we did at Corner Bank was a deep dive analysis, especially on the big data. So data-wise, we're not too bad at all, because due to the advantage of working with credit card, we had the opportunity to analyze a portion of the transaction that the customer is doing, taking into account that we have every customer might even have other cards than Cornèrcard only. But this kind of behavior is important in terms of potential analysis of the attitude purely based on the transaction. What Brandmind added in terms of analysis is the psychological profile, psychometric profile, and this made our analysis and our possibility to enter into marketing strategy much deeper and much more effective. We split the group in 4 different subgroup, I would say, based on the high-level profile, entering into the most important tracking keywords. The keywords have, at the end of the day, 2 main objectives. First of all, to drive the communication per cluster. And second, to remind in the way in which are communicated the sense of that word. If we go to compare what we reached beforehand and what we reached after having completed not only the analysis, but even the implementation with success, the effect of the marketing communication in terms of attractiveness, in terms of using of the product, in terms of customer satisfaction overall, was definitely very, very successful. So we have been very happy. And this is definitely one of the way in which We have taken profit in terms of improvement after having overcome the COVID situation. We worked with Brandmind before and after COVID. And for sure, this kind of approach helped us in order to rocket our transaction and volume level, overcoming the pandemic effect faster. From our perspective, this was absolutely a very important experience. We moved in a different kind of approach compared to the past. And for sure, adding big data with small data and psychometrical data would, in my opinion, especially for the companies that have several kinds of customers, with no direct contact in terms of physical contact, one of the biggest clues in order to succeed.
Great. Thank you so much, David. So what's really interesting is that back then, the idea was yours to go into the psychometric profiling. It was not even our idea. And I think it's important to describe that to the audience, because no one else knows this kind of approach really well yet. So, and it needs a certain kind of holistic understanding to even come to that kind of idea, right? And I think maybe it would be interesting for people to understand what drove you back then to come to that conclusion that psychometric profiling would be something of benefit for Cornèrcard.
Okay. First of all, coming to the point I already raised, if you're driving a company where your relationship with customer is not, I would say, direct in terms of possibility to look at the customer behavior face to face, one of the most important things is to analyze customer behavior. And originally, one of the ways in which all the companies, not only Cornèrcard, is trying to interpret the behaviors are not only based on transactional analysis, so there's the big data I mentioned before, but even some groups that have been engaged in order to get questions and try to get answers. What normally happens is that if you are not very effective in preparing the questionnaire, or if the group has some guy that is more assertive than others, the effect of the answer is not so significant, because if it is a guy that is saying good or bad, yes or no, or is expressing the opinion very strongly and with a lot of emotion, with a lot of effectiveness, all the group has the difficulties to express his own opinion, or they can create some situation in which it's not so easy to grab information and to grab facts that drive marketing initiatives. Other kind of analysis are the quantitative analysis. You just send a questionnaire asking for question, but normally the question is yes, mostly in this case, yes or no. It's very difficult that customer takes time in order to provide you more insights or more details of his opinion, because questionnaire are not made in the way in which the customer might be open enough.
Yeah.
And therefore, taking profit of the background of one of our employee within the organization that has a background, even the best psychological background, we decided to do two kinds of activities with Brandmind. First of all, we checked with a very small group the effect of some card keywords using some, I would say, electric cascade, if I remember well. Is the name right?
With neural measurements like brainwaves, pulse, and micromimics that we measured. Yeah, in deep psychological interviews. Yeah.
And these kind of psychological interviews, having selected a statistical number and kind of customer that is good enough to represent the total customer inventory, and provide us some more information in terms of proxy, because when you raise questions with guys that are wearing such a tool, such a kind of cascade, the advantage is that they are not in the position to say something that is not in line with what they really think, what they really like. And therefore, you are collecting some kind of reaction linked to specific words, linked to specific emotion that are bringing in connection with the same words.
Mm.
And this was one of the things we made. On top of that, we provided with a certain set of data, Brandmind, in order to activate another kind of quantitative analysis, in order to be, and even the way in which we are communicating so far. Mm. So it's a combination of data, customer profile, and way to communicate. Yeah. And then we compare the effect of what came out of the small group analysis that could be also in a proxy perspective put into the wider group, with customer profile, customer transactional behavior, and the way we communicate. And so we realized, as normally happens, that our way to communicate was sometimes effective, most of the time not so effective, because we were oriented to communicate what the values for us were important. Yeah, that's pretty typical, you know, because instead of understanding, because it's very difficult after having had just quantitative analysis or interviews in a very assertive way, it's very difficult to understand which kind of keywords is appreciated from the customer. And therefore, we were used to communicate in the way in which we were convinced to succeed. And we were not focused in different kind of working groups. Yeah. And therefore, if you it's not a matter of young or old or man or women. It's definitely not the way. The approach, psychological approach of the people might definitely overcome this kind of theoretical threshold. You could definitely be lover of much more emotional, much more pragmatic, much more rational, and there's a several set of different profile. And luckily enough, every one of us is unique, as we all know. But some drivers could try to create some, aggregation, and you can belong to some specific group.
Yes, that's true.
Once so, it is becoming easier to communicate using the keywords have been set in the initial experience of the first small group meeting in order to become effective, more effective, I would say.
Yeah. So in general, people think that with this approach, you need to change everything. But from our experience also in the project, it's not that you need to change everything. These small changes like trigger words or changing pictures, small effects or small changes can lead to bigger effects than when you communicate. So, and I think that's also important because many companies think, okay, now we need to change like everything what we have done. It's not everything bad. It's just small adjustments per psychological type that you do in communication that could have a huge impact.
For sure. So first of all, I think the priority number one for a company that want to try to enter into this kind of journey is to be open-minded enough to accept that something that has been done so far was not effective.
Yeah.
And if we are open-minded, we can simply start from the situation we have without judging if the situation is good or bad. The situation is, it is what it is. The marketing results are, not good or bad, are the ones that we have reached so far. Therefore, once we have made this kind of analysis, we can realize that something has been done in a good way. Some other things could be improved. Once we have clear which kind of new activity or new way to communicate has to be implemented, it's, in my opinion, very effective to start with initial small tests, so as to have the comparison between the new effect and the old effect. So keeping a sort of, level of comparison in terms of potential different result on the scale level.
Yeah.
And so in this case, if you're having 4 different new groups instead of 1 only, you keep within the every 4 groups a portion of the customers not touched with a new way to communicate, and then you compare the effectiveness. Which kind of effectiveness? For example, the interaction, digital interaction, the frequency of contacts with other kind of touch points, the effect in terms of reaction of specific campaign, in terms of credit cards of transaction, the easiness to get revolved. Some example like that.
Yeah.
For sure, you don't have to change everything. It's just some fine tuning.
Yeah.
It's clear that in every organization, changing something represent a disruptive momentum, because most of the people within the organization are, very jealous of what they've done so far. So even the perception of the change is always huge. But if we look at a very, rational way, sometimes you have just to change some words, and you're not to change everything. Yeah. You have to change using different color, using different, trying to connect offline with online. That should definitely, in any case, be a standard in the way in the world and in the moment in which we are living communication-wise. So the cost related to the change is really minimal, and the effect is much bigger.
And I think what back then the marketing team reflected to us was also that the approach of the profiling, delivering the information of the psychometric profile per customer on each and every customer data field within the CRM, that it is stored within the CRM then, and a CRM manager can then select it and do out of this then the campaigning, was a huge benefit for them. Because normally how it works, and you described it initially, was you do market research, you get kind of personas, right, that were done on consumer market research, but they are not connected to data, to customer data. So actually a CRM manager is not really able to do marketing because they cannot connect it. So the only thing that that they can use out of consumer personas is maybe the age, but this is really limited information to connect and then do out of this campaigning. So this was one of the aspects that the marketing team said, okay, this is good, because then marketing can start to work with this on a regular basis and doesn't need to do always market research. It's in the system.
Indeed. So what we had before cooperating with Brandmind was within the CRM were 2 different communication layer. Financial information that were able to track, select, and categorize customer based on which kind of transaction we're doing in terms of financial perspective. So, for example, more evolved than paying everything directly, or more cash than kind of transaction, and so on and so forth. The second level was where the customer were transacting. In this case, you can infer which kind of merchant category code they love the most. Yeah. These 2 levels could be qualified within the part of big data. But big data are important in order to have an idea of portfolio inventory perspective. What we added through the help of Brandmind was adding a 3rd layer that made the analysis more personal, matching financial, transactional, and personal profile, so as to link the way to communicate with something we have already noticed be interesting for them.
Yeah.
And this is the communication that we can qualify as marketing one-to-one, using the tool that we have already developed, partially in-house, partially on a buy perspective. On top of that, were higher level of communication, so the branding communication that has to be also aligned.
Yeah.
This was one of the most difficult things because, branding as well is something that where there is a lot of jealousy to change what has always been. But again, once we had implemented this kind of link between communication one-to-one on a marketing perspective with brand communication, the customer automatically might even feel self closer to the product and to the brand together.
Yeah.
So the two things have to go together. The kind of communication, offline, online, the different layer of communication, so branding communication and one-to-one communication. And within the one-to-one communication, in case, for example, of credit cards, you can connect financial, transactional, and personal. This is valid in other industry, in my opinion. This is not necessarily valid for finance only, but this was our experience of what we have done together with.
And I think this showcases very much that the profiling itself is, and that's how I perceived it, how you see it, is a kind of strategic compass for different areas in the company. So one is the profiling itself in direct one-to-one marketing. On the other side, it has an impact on branding, because this has, where you position your brand has an impact on which psychological types you might attract the most in the future based on your communication. Then you have the sales part, where you understand salespeople need to be trained to effectively communicate with potential clients. So you can use this profiling approach in different areas so that you align them on one aspect, right?
Indeed. So once we have understood combining the three profiles I mentioned before, so financial, transaction, and personal behavior, which kind of customer we would like to get and to retain, but even to attract, we build a very careful level of communication, even in the acquisition, in order to try to replicate the profile that were for us the most effective. Even in this case, the change we have made is not definitely so huge, because what we have to do is to change the words that we use in order to attract in the open market, as well as the maybe even just the order of the same words. Because sometimes if you change the emphasis of some words, it's like in an advert slogan or in a different kind of claims, irrespective of which kind of communication tool the customer is taking care of or fearing of. And therefore, we realized that we had two different advantages. The customer we acquired were more in line of the customer we like to have. And the level of quality that is generating even a saving from an operational perspective have been important, because instead of eliminating some kind of application that were not in line with the profile we love to have, in absolute terms, can even have the risk of having less application on a gross perspective, but at the end of the process, the net level could be the same or even more. And in our industry, there was also another advantage, because it was part of the analysis, the potential risk of the customer in terms of credit risk, for example, or operational risk have been weighted. And even in this case, through this kind of additional analysis, we have tried to predict, based on the profile we had in the inventory, which kind of customer might sooner or later generate a credit risk.
Wow.
And even in the acquisition, we created a condition of trying to minimize in the onboarding this kind of risk. It's clear that there is no analysis that might even predict something that goes completely as unexpected. For example, a pandemic effect or the effect of the war or some financial shock. But in a more stable situation, more standard situation, is something that, despite from this kind of this particular event, might even be the normality. Even the effect of the onboarding and the risk related could definitely represent for an industry that is at the end of the day providing credit very important.
Okay, great. So now for all the companies outside, you were like a first mover, you are thinking innovative, you want to improve. Now for the majority of companies who are not there yet or haven't thought about something like this, what would you recommend in general, also for the psychometric profiling, but in general instead, before the psychometric profiling, you need to have kind of a braveness to start to think, broader than your your circle.
So what I strongly recommend are a set of, say, golden rules. First of all, it's important, in principle, always to try to evolve. Living in the world in which we are just staying in the comfort zone is definitely not coherent with a world that is changing so fastly. Trying to think out of the box is always important, but just thinking out of the box using our own gut feeling is no more effective. So we have to combine the willingness to change with a scientific approach. And this scientific approach has to be linked to data. So you have to start from big data anyhow. If you do not have big data, the analysis is useless because it's just a gut feeling or opinion. Everybody might even have the opinion. What is good or what is bad? Yeah. What is black, what is white? Yeah. And therefore, if you start from big data, you have your initial platform to start from. Then you add another kind of layer, and you have to be very consistent when you set the testing phase. Yeah. The testing phase have to clearly determine which is your success level. Because if you do not set a success level, everything might be good or bad.
Yeah, that's true.
But at the same time, you have to consider that as every kind of innovation, to get better results, you have to consider that time is important. You cannot have a much more effective result marketing-wise in a month.
Yeah.
You normally have to consider a reasonable set of 1 year in order to see some movement. And you have to be very stubborn at the end of the day, because sometimes you can succeed, but sometimes you can even realize that, for example, the first 3 months you are rocketing your results, the fourth and the fifth, not. And you don't know why. This doesn't mean that what you have done is necessarily wrong, but you have to be fine-tuned.
Yeah.
So the golden rules, in my opinion, is not staying in the comfort zone, linking data to perception, and trying to be stubborn and try and give time enough to innovation to generate results.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Javi. This was really valuable, and highly appreciate this. And and really hope that I will see you again at some point, because it's some years ago now. And I'm happy that we took this opportunity here recording this. And we'll keep in touch. Thank you so much. And and I wish you an amazing day.
Thank you very much, Christina. It would definitely be my pleasure. I'm more than happy to have made this journey together. And for sure, I strongly recommend your company and even your professionality as an important way for the ones that want to improve and change in order to succeed more.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.